this is my issue with, and this is, I didn't come here today to adjudicate the beef between you and Sam. This is what I wanted to say to you, Tim. I understand that you are going to vote for Donald Trump in 2024. That's your right. I wholly support that. I respect you for it, right? You've thought your way into the position. That's democracy. We've got to work our butts off and beat you at the ballot box. I don't worry about losing an election to your audience as much as I worry about you convincing your audience that the Justice Department is crooked and the FBI is crooked and their local police department is crooked and the elections are crooked and that there's no point to believing in American democracy or
when have I ever said any of those things?
I think
so. You got to slow down there.
I think directionally speaking, this is the message of your show.
So let's go back to say like, elections are crooked.
Yeah.
That's probably a technicality in which I've said elections.
It's a technicality.
Yeah, sure. Let's explain. Elections have never been this. Two guys stand up, say, I have position A, I have position B, and then everyone smiles and shakes hands.
Sure.
Elections have always been dirty politics, ads that take quotes out of context. But I've never said that the elections are unwinnable or that there's no point. In fact, I said quite the opposite. Since Donald Trump lost to Joe Biden, I have even argued to Steve Bannon's face, he is wrong about how Donald Trump lost. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump lost because people voted against him. And there are people who think Joe Biden could not have gotten those votes. And I'm like, he didn't get those votes. They were anti-Donald Trump votes. Okay. This is what everything the media had said up until the 2020 election is that the famous article, I think it was Atlantic, stay alive, Joe Biden, we just need your corporeal form.
Okay, let's do this one at a time. Your audience deserves this. So it's your statement today. You believe Joe Biden won 2020 fair, like it was a free and fair election. You were on record saying that?
There's a lot to break down in what you mean by free and fair, but I believe that Joe Biden got more votes than Donald Trump.
Directionally.
Joe Biden got more votes than Donald Trump, and then there's the nuance of policy procedure and what people would argue is free and fair is what's that question. What's not a question is, I do not believe China mass printed votes or that Dominion was flipping things or any of that stuff. What matters is that through a overwhelmingly legal strategy and process, Democrats ran an election strategy which resulted in Joe Biden beating Donald Trump.
Okay. Can you delineate that a little bit more? What specifically do you mean?
So an article was published in Time magazine called The Shadow Campaign to Save the Election. Are you familiar with it?
No.
Let's pull this one up. This one breaks down exactly what the more moderate Trump supporters believe is cheating or what they would say is rigged. Obviously, you have the more egregious Dominion doing these things. This is nonsense. In this article that came out...
Wait. Obviously, you have the more egregious Dominion doing things?
Right. You have conspiracy theorists saying that Chinese ballots were made or something like that.
Bullshit.
Right. It's nonsense. Yeah. Complete and utter nonsense. And it actually distracts from the actual issues conservatives and Republicans would have to address if they want to win, which is Democrats masterfully played policy and procedure to the extent that they could, resulting in victories.
I got bad news for you, man. Every single modern presidential election has a team that looks at the legal strategy with this.
And
that's
why I
Bush
said
did.
I completely
do you
agree.
remember Bush winning in 2020?
Right.
2000
and that's
against
exactly why I said no election has ever been two people standing up saying, here are my beliefs, and then people just shake hands and agree.
How is this a bad thing? You have jurisprudence. You have people working through the legal... Hold on.
But I didn't say it was.
Working through the legal department in every single state and coming to this. Now, I think if you want to go back to 2000 and look at like the Miami-Dade County and some of the ways Bush won in 2000, I think there was some really, like Catherine Harris and all of that.
We're in agreement.
Then. Okay.
Yeah.
So, but this is the legal process playing out.
And the Democrats played it masterfully.
But the Republicans, everyone does this. This is just elections.
And the Trump team did it poorly. And so he loses.
Yeah, because he's incompetent.
Among many things, the people around him that he hired were abysmal. But in this article, for instance, this gets to the core of what we mean by free and fair elections. The average person you probably ask who is a Trump supporter is probably not going to say the election was stolen because China did X or Venezuela or Germany or whatever.
Right.
What they're going to say is, here you go, an article which includes Facebook putting in $500 million in funding to influence policy. Executives of states changing voting law without approval of state legislature. These are things that Republicans say, hey, you're playing dirty.
Hold on, say that last part again.
So one of the issues that was, this is Texas v. Pennsylvania, that the judiciary or the executive of various states changed election law without the approval of the legislature. The Constitution,
But if that's the process,
it's
in
not.
that
The
particular
Constitution,
state,
the Constitution says that the state legislatures have final say on how elections are conducted. But through judicial rulings, certain things end up getting changed.
that's jurisprudence, man.
And I'm not saying they're wrong to have done it. I'm saying Republicans will argue that's playing dirty. My response is you lost. Trump lost.
But don't
You guys
think
could have
that
done the exact
that's-
same thing.
Don't you think that that's deliberately confusing the issue for your audience?
What, breaking down and explaining how the elections work?
I think they're, it's the way
Like, we're not disagreeing at all.
on,
You're
hold
acting
on.
like we are.
Well, I think we are, or at least this is my disagreement with you. I think there are ways to talk about, here's one. An issue I really care a lot about is cybersecurity and elections. This is huge.
Yeah,
This is something I
me too.
care a ton about. We have, 50 states, a ton of territories, individual counties in every single state, different voting systems, different operating systems, different voting machines.
Proprietary code that the public can't
not
see.
open source.
Yeah.
Should flatly be illegal.
Agreed.
This is a huge issue. There's a way to talk about that calmly and rationally that doesn't mislead the American people into thinking that, say China has hacked into our
completely
voting
agree.
machines.
I despise that
and
narrative.
altered the results. I think my critique of your show, respectfully, would be, I think there's a sleight of hand that leads your audience to frequently believe that our Justice Department is broken, that our elections are broken.
When did the Justice Department get fixed?
The Justice Department is an imperfect thing that has many successes, but and failures as well. Hold on. This is important. So in the middle of Gamergate, I worked directly with the Eric Holder Justice Department trying to get some of the highest profile death threats on my life prosecuted. Plainly illegal, had multiple calls with the White House about this. The Justice Department personally failed me. So I've got my own beefs here. But I think directionally, if you look at who works at the Justice Department, it tends to be career prosecutors that are not partisan, that are there trying to do the best they can. And I do believe, I think Sean would agree with me, our mutual friend Sean, actual justice warrior, that the United States does have directionally one of the better justice systems in the entire world.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean the DOJ is not broken. I mean,
What is broken in your mind?
let's talk about, I don't know, like Martin Luther King Jr. or Malcolm X. Let's go back in time and talk about, you got that really great meme about the CIA, which I also think very much applies to the FBI, that we know they've done crooked things in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s.
Yeah.
There's been no serious reforms, but don't worry, everything's okay now.
We've
Nonsense.
Nicaragua, Chile,
the list goes on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's very much busted.
There's no one in this room, I think, today that would not strongly argue that the United States has not made immense foreign policy missteps.
Right.
But I think directionally, if you look at the work of the Justice Department, I do think these are honest professionals trying to do the best. And just one more thing on this. This is a complaint I have about the left, too. Because something I deal with so often is people that just believe automatically like every police officer is corrupt or crooked and we just need to be like they're all evil. And I think about my conservative friend Connor, Counterpoints on Twitter. Y'all should follow him. Yeah, he was telling me the other day about how when he was a cop, he got paid $40,000 a year to wrestle crackheads to the ground every other day. It's
Not
a terrible job. So I think that I wish that we could reframe the ways that we talk about these issues as constructive instead of destructive. I think destructive is talking about the Justice Department as if it's crooked, it's in the bag against Trump. I think constructive is to look at the situations like Martin Luther King to talk about reforming it within the system and make sure those excesses do not happen again.
We'll wrap up the election point, and there has never been a point in which I have advocated for or even defended in any way. In fact, I've become triggered in the people trying to maintain these absurd narratives to the point of anger when they would say things like the real inauguration date is March 11th,
Right.
and then it doesn't happen. And then the most annoying thing about the whole fraud narrative is that Trump comes out right after the election saying it was stolen from me, convincing his voters not to vote in Georgia. And then you end up with Warnock winning
I'm so
because
glad
of
to
voter.
hear you say this. Thank you,
But this has
Tim.
always been my position. And so this is the frustrating thing about political commentary on the left, nonprofit organizations that profit off of lying about what my position is. We have Steve Bannon in this room sitting down, and I
passed a picture of him on the way here.
That's right.
Yeah.
Signed. And I say to him, you are wrong about fraud. Democrats have activists who go on the ground and knock on doors. They have lawyers like Mark Elias. They outplayed you in every way through a legal process. And the Trump supporters got mad that they were outplayed.